The morning sun blazed mercilessly over Denver, Colorado, turning the streets into shimmering ribbons of heat. Officer adjusted his utility belt as he stepped out of his patrol car, his boots hitting the pavement with a familiar thud. Beside him, Rex emerged with graceful power, 90 pounds of muscle, intelligence, and unwavering loyalty wrapped in a sleek German shepherd coat. The dog's ears stood at attention, constantly scanning the environment, a testament to years of rigorous training. "Come on, boy. Let's show these kids what real police work looks like," said, running his hand along Rex's head. The touch was automatic, a gesture of partnership that had developed over 5 years of working together. They'd been through everything: drug busts, search and rescue operations, and countless community events. But lately had found himself gravitating more toward these community visits. At 42 years old, with 10 years on the force, he'd seen enough darkness to appreciate moments of light. Riverside Elementary School erupted in excited squeals as Rex entered the gymnasium. Children pressed forward, their hands raised eagerly, questions tumbling out faster than he could answer them. Does Rex bite bad guys? Can he smell drugs from a mile away? What does he eat? Smiled, patient as always, letting Rex demonstrate his training. The dog performed flawlessly, sitting, staying, finding a hidden tennis ball in under 30 seconds. The children's faces lit up with wonder and felt that familiar warmth in his chest. This was why he'd become a police officer, not for the car chases or arrests, but for moments like these, for connection, for community. An hour later, Rex walked toward Riverside Park, just 3 blocks from the school. The heat had intensified, making the shade of the park's old oak trees irresistible. Grabbed a water bottle from his patrol car and poured some into his cupped hand for Rex, who lapped it up gratefully. "Good boy," murmured, scanning the park out of habit. Parents pushed children on swings. Teenagers skateboarded near the basketball courts. Everything appeared peaceful, ordinary. He had no idea his life was about to change forever. Across the park, on a weathered wooden bench beneath a willow tree, Maria sat with her daughter Sophia cradled against her side. Maria's dark hair was pulled back in a hasty ponytail, and exhaustion lined her 34-year-old face like a roadmap of sleepless nights and answered prayers. Her husband Carlos would join them after his shift at the warehouse ended at noon. For now, it was just mother and daughter, trapped together in a world of silence. Sophia was beautiful, everyone said so. At 3 years old, she had her mother's olive skin and her father's intense dark eyes. Curly black hair framed her round face, and her tiny body radiated health and energy. But Sophia had never spoken. Not mama, not dada, not even a simple no during her terrible twos. The diagnosis had come when she was 18 months old, autism spectrum disorder with severe speech delay. The doctors had used gentle words, nonverbal, communication challenges, alternative methods of expression, but Maria had heard only one thing: her daughter might never speak. They'd tried everything. Speech therapy 3 times a week with Dr. Jennifer, one of the best therapists in Denver, occupational therapy, picture boards, sign language. Sophia's bedroom was filled with communication devices that blinked and beeped. Sophisticated technology meant to give her a voice. But Sophia showed little interest. She'd look through people rather than at them, lost in an interior world Maria couldn't access. The therapists assured her that Sophia was intelligent, that her comprehension was developing normally. She simply couldn't, or wouldn't, speak. Maria watched other children on the playground with an ache that had become constant. A little boy called to his mother, "Push me higher." A girl laughed and shouted, "I'm a princess." Such simple things, such everyday miracles. Maria would have given anything to hear Sophia's voice. Just once, just one word, she didn't care what it was. Mama would be perfect, but she'd settle for dog or ball or even no. Just proof that her daughter could connect with the world through words. "You whispered," kissing Sophia's head. "Do you want to go on the swing?" Sophia didn't respond, didn't even turn her head. She sat motionless except for her fingers, which twisted and untwisted the hem of her yellow sundress, a repetitive motion that soothed her. Maria's phone buzzed with a text from Carlos. "How's my princess? Tell her daddy loves her." Maria typed back with one hand. Same as always, I love you. She didn't add what she was really thinking. I'm so tired. I'm so scared. What if she's trapped in there forever? The morning wore on. Children came and went. Birds sang in the trees. Life continued its relentless march forward while Maria sat frozen in time, holding her silent daughter. She thought about the well-meaning friends who'd suggested maybe Sophia would grow out of it, or who'd sent articles about miracle cures and experimental treatments. She thought about her mother-in-law who kept insisting they just needed to be stricter, as if discipline could force words from a child who couldn't produce them. She thought about the future. Would Sophia ever go to regular school, make friends, fall in love, live independently? Then Maria felt it, a change. Sophia's body stiffened slightly and her repetitive finger movements stopped. Maria looked down at her daughter and gasped. Sophia's eyes were focused, truly focused, on something across the park. Maria followed her gaze and saw a police officer standing near the fountain with a large German shepherd. The dog was drinking water, its tail wagging slightly. "Do you see the doggy, Sophia?" Maria asked gently, not expecting a response. She never expected responses anymore. But Sophia did something she'd never done before. She pulled away from her mother's embrace and slid off the bench. Her small feet touched the grass and she stood up. Maria's heart began to pound. Sophia! But Sophia wasn't listening. She was walking purposefully, determinedly, straight toward the police dog. Her small arms swung at her sides and her curls bounced with each step. She looked like a child on a mission. "Sophia, wait!" Maria jumped up, her purse falling to the ground, forgot. Fear clutched her throat. Sophia had never shown interest in animals before, never approached strangers, never wandered away. What was happening? Maria started running, her sandals slapping against the pavement, but Sophia was already 20 feet away, then 30, closing the distance between herself and destiny with every small, determined step. Officer was checking his watch, calculating whether he had time for a quick lunch before his next patrol shift, when Rex's ears suddenly perked up. The dog's body language shifted, not to alert status, but to something softer, more curious. Followed Rex's gaze and spotted a small figure moving across the grass with surprising speed. A little girl, maybe 3 years old, wearing a bright yellow sundress that fluttered around her knees as she walked. She was heading directly toward them. "Easy, Rex," said softly, placing a gentle hand on the dog's back. Rex was exceptionally well-trained and gentle with children but never took chances. He'd seen too many situations go wrong in seconds. The little girl was tiny, vulnerable. One wrong move, one startled reaction from either the child or the dog, and this peaceful park day could turn into a tragedy. His muscles tensed as the child drew closer, 10 feet away now, then 8, then 6. Behind the little girl, a woman was running, sprinting actually, her face pale with terror. "Sophia, Sophia, stop!" Her voice cracked with panic, raw and desperate in a way that made protective instincts flare. Something was wrong here. Children usually ran toward dogs with obvious excitement, arms outstretched, squealing with delight. But this little girl moved differently. Her face was serene, almost trance-like, as if pulled by an invisible string she couldn't resist. "Rex, sit. Stay calm, boy," commanded quietly but firmly. The German shepherd immediately dropped into a sitting position, his tail still wagging slightly, his brown eyes fixed on the approaching child with what could only describe as gentle curiosity. In 5 years of partnership, had learned to read Rex's body language as clearly as another person's facial expressions. Right now, Rex was calm, interested, and completely non-threatening. Thank God for that. The woman the child's mother assumed was still running, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She was maybe 30 feet away but losing ground. The little girl was faster, more determined, her focus absolute. Raised one hand in what he hoped was a calming gesture toward the mother. "It's okay," he called out. "Rex is friendly. He won't hurt her." But even as he said it, his heart hammered in his chest. He'd been in that left him less nervous than this moment. Sophia reached them. She stopped exactly 2 feet in front of Rex, close enough to touch but not touching yet. Held his breath. The park seemed to go silent, or maybe it was just that all his attention had narrowed to this single point in space and time. The little girl and the dog. two beings looking at each other across the divide that separated species, and something else too, something couldn't name but could feel humming in the air like electricity before a storm. The mother arrived, gasping for air, her hands reaching for her daughter but not grabbing her, as if afraid to break whatever spell had been cast. "I'm so sorry," she panted to. She doesn't usually, I don't know what." The words tumbled out disconnected, painted with fear and confusion and something else. Hope glanced at the woman and saw tears already forming in her eyes, though nothing had happened yet. Why was she crying? "It's all right, ma'am," said softly. "Rex is a trained police K-9. He's completely safe with children. He does school visits all the time." He kept his voice low and soothing, the same tone he used with victims of domestic violence or scared witnesses. Something told him this situation required gentleness, though he couldn't explain why. The mother nodded but didn't speak again. Her hand covered her mouth and her whole body trembled. A man came running up, shorter, stocky, with work-stained jeans and panic written across his face. "Maria, what happened? I got your text," and he stopped mid-sentence, seeing his daughter standing before the police dog. He whispered, crossing himself, "Sophia, please be careful." His voice was thick with an accent and thicker with fear, but like his wife, he didn't move to pull the child away. They both stood frozen, watching, waiting. Sophia raised her small right hand. It hung in the air for a moment, fingers slightly splayed, and could see the dirt under her tiny fingernails, could see the small freckle on her wrist. Every detail became crystalline, hyper-real. Rex's tail wagged once, a slow sweep across the grass. The dog's eyes never left the little girl's face, and realized with a start that Rex was completely still otherwise, not even panting despite the heat. It was as if the dog knew, on some instinct level that transcended training, that this moment mattered. The little girl's hand touched Rex's head, right between his ears in that soft spot where the fur grew in a gentle whorl. Her tiny fingers disappeared into the thick black and tan coat, and Rex's eyes closed halfway in contentment. Watched the child's face transform. Her mouth, which had been pressed into a thin, emotionless line, curved slightly upward. Not quite a smile, but something like the memory of a smile, as if her body was remembering how. "She's autistic," the mother whispered suddenly, urgently, as if this information was desperately important for to know. "She doesn't speak. She's never spoken, not one word in 3 years. She doesn't usually interact like this with anyone or anything. I don't understand what's happening." The last sentence came out as a sob, and the father wrapped his arm around his wife's shoulders, his own eyes brimming with tears now too. Felt a chill run down his spine despite the summer heat. He'd been a police officer for 10 years. He delivered death notifications and bobbies. He'd talked people down from ledges and arrested murderers. He'd seen humanity at its worst and occasionally at its best, but nothing had prepared him for this, for the weight of this moment pressing down on his shoulders like a physical thing. This little girl who'd never spoken was standing in front of his partner, petting Rex with an expression of pure, uncomplicated wonder. Other people in the park had started to notice. A grandmother on a nearby bench stood up, shading her eyes with her hand. 2 teenagers stopped skateboarding and drifted closer. A jogger slowed to a walk, then stopped entirely. Something in the quality of the silence drew them, made them witnesses to something they couldn't yet name but could feel. Sophia's other hand came up now, both small palms cupping Rex's face, her fingers gentle against his muzzle. Rex remained perfectly still, a living statue of patience and gentleness. The little girl leaned forward slightly, bringing her face close to the dog's, and heard her take a deep breath, the kind of breath someone takes before jumping into cold water or stepping off a high dive. A breath that precedes a leap of faith. The mother's hand found her husband's and gripped it so tightly her knuckles turned white. Tears streamed down both parents' faces now, though nothing had happened yet. But they knew. Somehow they knew. Knew too, though he couldn't have explained how. The air itself seemed to be holding its breath, waiting. The whole world balanced on the edge of a moment that would change everything. And then Sophia opened her mouth. Time fractured. That's the only way could describe it later when he tried to explain what happened next. 1 second, He was watching a nonverbal autistic child pet his dog. The next second, the entire universe shifted on its axis, and nothing would ever be the same again. Sophia's lips moved. Her small mouth formed shapes it had apparently never formed before, muscles learning in real time how to create the miracle of human speech. Her dark eyes remained locked on Rex's face, and the dog, somehow, impossibly, seemed to understand the magnitude of what was about to happen. Rex's tail stopped wagging. He sat so still he could have been carved from stone, every ounce of his being focused on this tiny human child. "Hi, puppy." The words were soft, barely more than a whisper, but they hit the air like a thunderclap. 2 words. 2 simple, perfect, impossible words in a small, clear voice that had never existed before this moment. Maria's legs gave out. She didn't faint, she simply collapsed as if someone had cut the strings holding her upright. Her knees hit the grass hard, but she didn't seem to feel it. Her hands flew to her face, covering her mouth, and a sound came out of her, part scream, part sob, part prayer, that had never heard a human make before. It was the sound of 3 years of silence shattering all at once. "Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God!" Carlos was repeating it over and over, his voice breaking on each word. He dropped down beside his wife, his arms wrapping around her, both of them shaking so violently thought they might need medical attention. But they weren't collapsing from weakness. They were collapsing from the weight of joy too massive for the human body to contain while standing. Felt his own vision blur. Hot tears spilled down his cheeks, and he didn't bother wiping them away. His throat constricted so tightly he couldn't have spoken if he'd wanted to. In 10 years of police work, he'd cried exactly 3 times, once at his father's funeral, once when his partner was shot, and once when he'd pulled a drowning child from a pool and brought her back to life with CPR. This was the 4th time, and somehow it felt bigger than all the others combined. Sophia seemed completely unaware of the chaos she'd created. Her attention remained fixed on Rex with laser focus. Her small hands continued stroking the dog's fur, exploring the texture, the warmth, the realness of him. And then her mouth opened again. "Good puppy." 2 more words. Carlos made a choking sound and buried his face in his wife's shoulder, his whole body heaving with sobs. Maria was beyond words now, beyond anything except the primal act of crying, her face twisted in an expression that somehow held both agony and ecstasy at once. It was the face of someone who'd been carrying an impossible weight for so long that she'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight, and now, suddenly, that weight was gone. The grandmother who'd been watching rushed over, tears streaming down her own weathered face. "I just witnessed a miracle," she said, her voice trembling. "I just watched God move." She wasn't even part of this family, didn't know these people, but she was crying as if Sophia were her own granddaughter. 2 other mothers appeared, drawn by the commotion, and when they understood what was happening, they began crying too. Tears are contagious that way. Joy, when it's pure enough, spreads like wildfire. Rex, bless him, remained perfectly still. His brown eyes were soft, gentle, and if didn't know better, he'd swear the dog understood exactly what was happening. Maybe he did. Maybe dogs understood things humans couldn't. Maybe Rex knew he was part of something sacred. Sophia giggled. The sound was like bells, like water over stones, like every beautiful sound had never appreciated before because he'd taken for granted that children laughed. Her small face lit up with genuine delight, dimples appearing in her cheeks, and realized this might be the first time her parents had ever heard her laugh. Not just a sound, but a real laugh. The expression of joy that proved she was connecting, feeling, experiencing the world in a way she never had before. "Soft," Sophia said, her fingers running through Rex's fur. Then, "Nice." She patted the dog's head with gentle movements. "Dog." Each word was a detonation. Carlos had given up trying to stay composed. He was flat out weeping now, his face red and splotchy, snot running from his nose, completely undone. Maria had progressed from sobbing to that strange laugh-crying hybrid that happens when emotion overflows the brain's capacity to process it. She was hiccuping, gasping, laughing, and crying all at once, her hands reaching toward her daughter but not quite touching her, as if afraid she might break the spell. "She's talking," Maria kept saying to no one and everyone. "She's talking. My baby is talking. Carlos, she's talking." As if saying it enough times would make it feel real, would help her brain accept what her ears were hearing. A jogger had stopped dead in his tracks, his water bottle forgotten in his hand. The two teenagers were filming on their phones, tears running down their own faces even though they were trying to look cool about it. One of them, a boy with dyed blue hair and multiple piercings, whispered to his friend, "Dude, I can't stop crying." "What the hell?" His friend just shook his head, equally overwhelmed. Finally found his voice, though it came out rough and broken. "Sophia," he said gently. The little girl looked up at him for the first time, making eye contact, another thing her parents would later say she rarely did. "Sophia, this is Rex. Can you say Rex?" Sophia looked back at the dog, considering, her brow furrowed in concentration. She said carefully, "Close enough, more than close enough." It was the most beautiful mispronunciation had ever heard. "Yes, sweetheart," said, crying openly now, not caring who saw. "His name is Rex. He's a very good dog." "Good," Sophia repeated, and she wrapped her small arms around the dog's neck in a hug. Rex's tail began wagging again, sweeping across the grass in wide, joyful arcs. The dog turned his head slightly and licked Sophia's cheek, making her giggle again, that bell sound that knew he would hear in his dreams for the rest of his life. Maria finally moved. She crawled forward on her knees and wrapped herself around her daughter, pulling Sophia into her lap while the little girl still clung to Rex. Me, Maria sobbed into Sophia's hair. "Say it again. Please say it again." Sophia pulled back slightly and looked at her mother, really looked at her, with recognition and understanding shining in her eyes. Her small hand patted Maria's wet cheek. "Mama," she said. Maria's scream could probably be heard 3 blocks away. She clutched Sophia, so tightly worried she might hurt the child. But Sophia was laughing, unbothered, her small body relaxed in her mother's crushing embrace. Carlos threw his arms around both of them, and the 3 of them became a knot of crying, laughing humanity right there on the grass of Riverside Park. Stepped back, giving the family space, but kept his hand on Rex's collar. The dog was panting now, his tail still wagging, looking immensely pleased with himself. "You did good, boy," whispered, his voice thick. "You did so good." Around them, at least a dozen people had gathered, all of them crying, all of them having witnessed something they would tell their own about someday. A moment that proved magic was real, that miracles still happened, that sometimes, in the most unexpected way, hope delivered exactly what it promised. And at the center of it all was a 3-year-old girl who'd found her voice because of a dog who'd somehow known exactly how to unlock it. Maria couldn't let go of Sophia. Her arms remained locked around her daughter, holding her as if the child might evaporate if she loosened her grip even slightly. Tears continued streaming down her face. She'd been crying for what felt like hours, but had been maybe 3 minutes. 3 minutes that had rewritten her entire life. 3 minutes that had answered 3 years of desperate prayers. Officer knelt down beside the family, Rex settling beside him with a contented sigh. The dog's tongue lolled out, panting in the heat, seemingly unaware that he'd just performed a miracle. Pulled out his water bottle and poured some into his cupped hand for Rex, his own hand still trembling slightly. "Ma'am," said gently, his voice still rough with emotion, "can you tell me, what just happened here? I mean, I saw it, but—" He trailed off, not quite sure how to articulate the question. He'd witnessed something extraordinary, but he needed to understand it. Maria looked up at him, her face streaked with tears and dirt from where she'd collapsed on the grass. Her mascara had run in dark rivers down her cheeks, and her hair had come completely loose from its ponytail, but didn't think he'd ever seen anyone look more beautiful. She was radiant with joy. "She's never spoken before," Maria managed to say, her voice breaking on every word. "Not once. 3 years old and not one single word. We've been in speech therapy since she was 18 months old. We've tried everything: picture boards, sign language, electronic devices, music therapy, occupational therapy, everything." She clutched Sophia. "The therapist said she might never speak, that we needed to accept alternative forms of communication. And I really tried to accept it, but every day I prayed. Every single day I asked God for just one word." Carlos finally composed himself enough to speak, though his voice came out hoarse and strained. "We thought she was trapped inside herself," he said, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "We could see the intelligence in her eyes, could see that she understood things, but she couldn't get the words out. It was like watching our daughter exist behind a glass wall we couldn't break through." Sophia, still in her mother's lap, reached out toward Rex again. "Puppy," she said clearly, and both parents dissolved into fresh sobs at hearing her voice again. It wasn't a dream. It was real. Their daughter could speak. "What's her name?" asked, though his throat was so tight the words barely came out. "Sophia," Maria said. "Sophia. She was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder when she was 18 months old. Nonverbal, they said. That was the word they kept using. Nonverbal." She laughed through her tears, a slightly hysterical sound. "She's not nonverbal anymore, is she?" Shook his head, his own tears starting again. "No, ma'am, she definitely is not." The grandmother, who'd been watching earlier, approached cautiously, clutching a tissue to her eyes. "I've lived in Denver for 73 years, she said, her voice quavering. "I've never seen anything like that. That dog is blessed. That child is blessed. You're all blessed." She pressed her hand to her heart. "I'm going to tell everyone I know what I witnessed today." One of the mothers who'd gathered nearby pulled out her phone. "I'm Hayes. I live 2 blocks from here. My daughter goes to Riverside Elementary. Would it be okay if I took some pictures? Not for social media or anything," she added quickly, seeing Maria's hesitation. "Just, I want to remember this. My daughter has special needs too, ADHD and sensory processing disorder. This gives me hope." Maria looked at Carlos, who nodded. "It's okay," Maria said. "If it helps other families, if it gives them hope." She couldn't finish the sentence, but understood. She raised her phone, capturing Sophia as the little girl continued to interact with Rex, her small voice trying out new words like a musician discovering her instrument for the first time. "Big," Sophia said, stretching her arms wide. "Big dog." Carlos pulled out his own phone with shaking hands. "I need to call doctor. She won't believe this. She needs to know." He fumbled with the screen, nearly dropping it twice before managing to start a video call. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times before a woman's face appeared, Asian, early 40s, wearing glasses and a concerned expression. "Carlos, is everything okay? You never called during." Dr. Jennifer stopped mid-sentence, her eyes widening as she saw the tears on Carlos's face. "What happened? Is Sophia all right?" "Doctor," Carlos said, turning the phone toward his daughter. "Listen, just listen." Sophia looked at the phone with curiosity. Maria pointed to the screen. "Sophia, can you say hi?" Sophia tilted her head, studying the woman on the phone screen. Then, as clearly as if she'd been speaking her whole life, she said, "Hi." Through the phone speaker, they heard Doctor gasp. Oh my God, is that, did she just, Carlos, what happened?" Carlos turned the phone back to himself, tears streaming down his face again. "She met a police dog and she just started talking. I know how it sounds, I know it's impossible, but I swear to you she's been speaking for the last 5 minutes. Full words, clear words." Doctor's hand flew to her mouth, her own eyes filling with tears behind her glasses. "Sometimes," she said, her voice trembling, "a powerful emotional connection can create a breakthrough that therapy can't achieve. Animals, especially dogs, they create a safe, non-judgmental space. No expectations, no pressure, they just exist with pure acceptance." She paused, wiping her eyes. "In 20 years of practice, I've heard of maybe 3 cases like this. It's incredibly rare." "Sophia, sweetheart, can you say something else for doctor?" Sophia looked at the phone again. She pointed at Rex. "Dog," she said, then she patted his head. "Nice dog." Doctor burst into tears, pressing her hand against the screen as if she could reach through and touch Sophia. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. You're doing so wonderful." She looked at Maria and Carlos. "Bring her in tomorrow. I want to assess her immediately, see what's opened up. This could be the beginning of everything." Had been quiet, letting the family have their moment, but now he spoke up. "Ma'am Maria, I want you to know that I'll bring Rex by whenever you'd like. If it helps Sophia, if it encourages her to keep speaking, I'll make time. Every day if I have to." He meant it. He would rearrange his entire schedule, take vacation days, do whatever it took. He'd been part of something miraculous today, and he wasn't going to walk away from it. Maria grabs hand, squeezing it hard. Thank you so much. I don't even know what to say. You and Rex, you've given us our daughter back. You've given her a voice." "Mama," Sophia said, looking up at Maria. Then she pointed at Carlos. "Dada." Carlos made a sound like he'd been punched in the stomach. He'd waited 3 years to hear his daughter call him daddy. He grabbed Sophia from Maria's arms and held her against his chest, rocking back and forth, sobbing into her hair. "Me," he choked out. "Me, Tonto." Sophia patted his face. "Dada," she said again, and then, miraculously, "Love you." The gathering crowd erupted into applause. Complete strangers clapped and cheered and cried together, united by the joy of witnessing something that proved the world could still surprise us, could still deliver hope when we needed it most. Hayes wiped her eyes and continued taking pictures, knowing she was documenting something that would matter, something that would ripple outward far beyond this single park on this single day. Rex yawned and stretched, completely unfazed by the emotional chaos he'd created, laughed through his tears and scratched behind the dog's ears. "You have no idea what you just did, do you, boy?" Rex's tail wagged, his expression suggesting that maybe he did know, or maybe he just enjoyed making people happy. Either way, he looked immensely satisfied with himself. Sophia wiggled out of her father's arms and toddled back to Rex. She sat down in the grass right beside the dog, leaning against his warm body. "My friend," she announced to everyone and no one. And in that moment, with the late morning sun burning bright overhead and tears drying on a dozen faces, a new reality settled into place. Sophia could speak. The impossible had happened. And tomorrow, when they told this story to people who hadn't been there, knew some wouldn't believe it, but it didn't matter. They had witnessed it. They had been there. And nothing would ever be the same again. Hayes sat in her minivan in the Riverside Park parking lot, her hands trembling as she stared at her phone. The video she'd recorded was just 47 seconds long, but those 47 seconds contained pure magic. Sophia's small voice saying, "Hi, puppy," was crystal clear. The gasps and sobs from Maria and Carlos were audible. Rex's gentle patience was visible in every frame. And the moment when Sophia said "Mama" and Dada had to stop watching because she started crying all over again. She'd asked the family for permission to share it. Maria had grabbed her hands and said, "Please, if this can help even one other family, please share it." So opened Facebook, typed a caption with shaking fingers and pressed post. "I just witnessed a miracle at Riverside Park. A 3-year-old girl with autism who has never spoken met a Denver police K-9 named Rex and spoke her first words. I'm still crying. Faith in miracles, restored. Miracle at Riverside Park." Sophia finds her voice. She attached the video, took a deep breath and hit share. Then she turned off her phone and drove home, emotionally exhausted, with no idea what she just set in motion. By the time pulled into her driveway 12 minutes later, her phone was buzzing non-stop. She pulled it out and stared in disbelief. Her video had 847 shares. 847 shares in 12 minutes. The comments were flooding in so fast she couldn't read them all. "I'm sobbing at my desk at work. This is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. That dog deserves a medal. That officer deserves recognition. That family deserves all the happiness in the world. My son has autism and is nonverbal. This just gave me so much hope I can't even breathe. Everyone needs to see this, everyone." Refresh the page. 1,203 shares now. She refreshed again 30 seconds later. 1,891 shares. The video was spreading like wildfire, jumping from Facebook to Twitter to Instagram, each platform amplifying it exponentially. By lunchtime, it had 47,000 views. By dinner, it had crossed 1 million. At the home, Maria's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Her mother called from Mexico, weeping. Her sister called from California. Friends she hadn't spoken to in years were calling. Text messages poured in, hundreds of them. Carlos's phone was in the same state. They'd silenced them both and just held Sophia, who was still speaking, testing out her newfound voice with the wonder of a child discovering a new toy. "Juice," Sophia said, pointing at the refrigerator. "Yellow," she said, touching her dress. "Book," she said, picking up a picture book from the coffee table. Every word was a celebration. Every word was proof that their lives had fundamentally changed. The doorbell rang at 5:47 p.m. Carlos answered it to find a woman in a business suit holding a microphone with a cameraman behind her. "Mister, I'm Jennifer Martinez from Channel 7 News. We've seen the video of your daughter and we'd love to talk to you about what happened today. Would you be willing to do an interview?" Carlos blinked in surprise. How did you find our address?" "Your friend Hayes gave us your contact information with your permission. She said you'd agreed to share your story." Maria appeared behind Carlos, still holding Sophia. "We did," she said. "If it can help other families, we want to share it." She looked at her daughter, who was staring at the camera with curiosity. "We want people to know that miracles are real." The interview aired on the 10 o'clock news. By 10:47 p.m., it had been picked up by the Associated Press. By midnight, CNN was running the story. By 3 a.m., it had spread internationally. The BBC, The Guardian, news outlets in Japan, Australia, Brazil, and dozens of other countries were covering it. Miracle in Denver. Nonverbal autistic child speaks first words to police dog. The Denver Police Department's phone lines lit up at 6 a.m. the next morning when staff arrived. The receptionist had worked there for 15 years and had never seen anything like it. "Denver Police, how may I direct your call?" she said for the 200th time that morning. "I just want to say thank you," a woman's voice said, thick with emotion. "I have a grandson with autism, and your officer and that beautiful dog just gave our whole family hope. Please tell officer that he's a hero." Had taken 67 similar calls by 9 a.m. Messages flooded the department's social media accounts: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Thousands upon thousands of comments, shares, and reactions. The video had posted now had over 20 million views across all platforms. Chief Robert called into his office at 9:30 a.m. Entered nervously, not sure if he was in trouble. Instead, the chief stood up, walked around his desk, and hugged him, something the normally stoic chief had never done before. "Do you have any idea what you and Rex have done?" Chief said, his voice gruff with emotion. "My phone hasn't stopped ringing. The mayor called, the governor called. I've gotten messages from police departments in 38 states asking how they can implement similar community programs. Good Morning America wants you and the family for a live interview tomorrow. The Today Show called. CNN, ABC, NBC, everyone wants this story." Sat down heavily. "Chief, I didn't do anything. Rex he was just being himself. And that little girl, Sophia, she did all the hard work." "Exactly," Chief said. "That's exactly the message people need to hear. That police officers are part of the community. That we're here to help, to connect, to serve. This is the best publicity the department has gotten in years, and it's because you took time to do a school visit and stop at a park. You showed what community policing really means." The chief pulled up his computer and showed the department's social media. The official Denver police account had posted the video with the caption, "Officer and K9 Rex are proud members of our community. This is what we mean by service. Denver proud community policing." The post had 3.4 million views and 847,000 likes. The comments were overwhelmingly positive, a stark contrast to the often critical commentary police departments usually received online. "We're doing a press conference at 2 p.m., Chief said. You, Rex, and the family if they're willing. The whole world wants to hear this story from the people who lived it." At ABC News headquarters in New York, producer Sarah was already planning a special segment. "Get me everything on this story," she told her team. "I want expert commentary, child psychologists, autism specialists, animal therapy researchers. I want to know the science behind what happened, and find out if there are similar cases. This isn't just a feel-good story. This could change how we approach autism therapy." Doctor, a leading autism researcher was already fielding calls from news outlets. "What we're seeing here aligns with emerging research on animal-assisted therapy," she explained in an interview with NPR. "Dogs create a unique neurological environment. They're non-threatening, non-judgmental, and they communicate primarily through body language and emotion rather than words. For some children with autism, this removes the pressure and anxiety associated with human interaction. The dog becomes a safe bridge to communication." On Twitter, Sophia and Rex was trending worldwide. Miracle at Riverside Park had over 500,000 tweets. Parents of children with autism were sharing their own stories, their own hopes. The conversation had exploded beyond just Sophia's story. It had become a global dialogue about autism, about therapy, about hope, and about the healing power of animals. Maria sat in her living room that evening, scrolling through the comments on its original post, tears streaming down her face for the 100th time that day. Carlos sat beside her, Sophia asleep in his lap, her small hand curled around his finger. The little girl who had been silent that morning had spoken at least 50 different words throughout the day. "We're going to be on Good Morning America tomorrow," Maria said, still not quite believing it. "Sophia's story is going to be on national television." Carlos kissed his daughter's head. "Maybe it'll help someone," he said quietly. "Maybe some other parent who's losing hope will see this and keep trying." Maria read another comment aloud. "I have a 4-year-old son with autism who doesn't speak. I've been in a really dark place lately, questioning if he'll ever connect with us. This video made me cry for an hour, but it also made me feel less alone. Thank you for sharing your miracle." She looked at her sleeping daughter, then at her husband. "We're sharing it," she said firmly. "Every interview, every news station that calls, we're saying yes. Because if Sophia's voice can help find another child's voice, then we owe it to every family out there to tell our story." Outside, the world continued to spin, but inside the home, everything had changed. And as night fell on Denver, millions of people across the globe went asleep having witnessed proof that miracles still happened, that hope was real, and that sometimes the most profound changes came from the simplest connections. A little girl, a dog, and 47 seconds that changed everything. Saturday morning, exactly 1 week after Sophia spoke her first words, officer pulled into the Riverside Park parking lot at 9:45 a.m. He'd expected maybe a handful of families to show up for the first official K-9 connection session the Denver Police Department had hastily organized. What he found instead made his jaw drop. There were at least 40 cars in the parking lot. As stepped out of his patrol vehicle, Rex beside him, he saw what had to be 100 people gathered on the grass: parents, children, grandparents, therapists, and news cameras. A lot of news cameras. Yellow police tape marked off a special area near the fountain where the sessions would take place. Other K-9 officers from the department had volunteered their time and their dogs, 5 additional police dogs in total, all trained and gentle. Chief waved him over, looking both excited and slightly overwhelmed. "We had to bring in traffic control. The response has been incredible." Scanned the crowd and spotted the family immediately. Sophia sat on a blanket, dressed in a pink t-shirt with a dog on it, bouncing with excitement. The moment she saw Rex, She jumped up and started running toward him, her small voice carrying across the park. "My friend." The crowd erupted in applause and tears. People who'd seen the viral video were now watching the sequel unfold in real time. Sophia crashed into Rex with a hug, and the German Shepherd's tail wagged so hard his entire back end wiggled. Knelt down, his own eyes getting misty, again. He'd cried more in the past week than in his entire adult life combined. "She's been talking about you all week," Maria said, approaching with Carlos. She looked lighter somehow, as if a weight she'd carried for years had finally lifted. "She wakes up every morning and asks for. She's learned over 200 words, officer, 200 words in 7 days. Her speech therapist says it's unprecedented." Dr. Jennifer appeared beside them, tablet in hand, looking both amazed and professionally thrilled. "Officer, what we're seeing with Sophia is extraordinary. It's like a dam broke in her brain. The floodgates opened and language is just pouring out. She's not just mimicking, she's creating sentences, expressing wants and needs, making connections." She shook her head in wonder. "In 20 years of practice, I've never seen progress this rapid." A young mother approached hesitantly, holding the hand of a boy who looked about 5. He was flapping his hands rhythmically and staring at the ground, avoiding all eye contact. "Excuse me," the woman said softly. "I'm Rachel. This is my son David. He's autistic and nonverbal. We drove 2 hours from Colorado Springs because we saw the video and we just had to try. Is it okay if David meets one of the dogs?" His throat tightened. "Of course, that's why we're here." He introduced David to Ranger, a Belgian handled by Officer Sarah. They sat on the grass, letting David approach at his own pace. The boy moved slowly, his hands still flapping, but his eyes, previously locked on the ground, lifted to look at the dog. 10 minutes passed. 15. David's hand reached out and touched Ranger's fur. 20 minutes. Then, so quietly that almost missed it, "Dog." Rachel collapsed onto the grass, her hands covering her face, sobs shaking her entire body. David's father, who'd been standing nearby, dropped to his knees. "He said dog," the father whispered, his voice breaking. "He said dog. Oh my God, he talked. David talked." And that was just the first hour. By noon, 3 more nonverbal children had spoken their first words to police dogs. A 6-year-old girl named Emma said puppy and soft. A 4-year-old boy named Malik said nice doggy. A 7-year-old girl who'd been completely silent her entire life, said, "I like you," to a chocolate lab named Duke, and her grandmother literally fainted from shock and joy. The news cameras captured everything. CNN ran it live. The Today Show sent a remote crew. International outlets were streaming it online. K9 Connection was trending globally. The Denver Police Department's social media exploded with messages from police departments across the country wanting to know how to replicate the program. Found himself surrounded by reporters during a break. "Officer, what do you think is happening here?" a journalist from the Washington Post asked. Looked around at the families, at the tears, the laughter, the children connecting with dogs, the parents experiencing hope for the first time in years. "I think," he said carefully, "we're seeing what happens when we remember that policing isn't just about enforcement. It's about community. It's about connection. Rex and these other K9s, they're just being themselves, patient, gentle, accepting. They don't judge. They don't have expectations. They just offer unconditional presence." And somehow, that's exactly what these kids need. By 3 o'clock, word had spread beyond just autism families. A physical therapist brought a child recovering from selective mutism. An occupational therapist brought 2 children with severe social anxiety. A veteran brought his teenage daughter who'd stopped speaking after a traumatic event. And one by one, connections were made. Not all of them resulted in immediate speech, but every single child engaged more than their parents had seen in months or years. Maria stood with a group of other mothers, all of them wiping tears, all of them sharing stories. "We should do something," Maria said suddenly. "We should make this permanent, not just a weekly thing in Denver, but something bigger, a real organization that can help families everywhere." A woman named Lisa, whose daughter had just said her first words to Rex, nodded vigorously. "I work in nonprofit management. I could help set something up. We could get funding, create programs, train therapy dogs specifically for this." "We could call it Pause in Progress," suggested another mother, Jennifer, whose son had autism. "Because that's what this is, progress through pause." The group exchanged phone numbers, emails, and promises. By the time they left the park that evening, they'd outlined a complete plan. They would form a 501c3 nonprofit. They would raise money to fund animal-assisted therapy programs. They would partner with police departments, therapy dog organizations, and autism advocacy groups. They would train dogs specifically for this work. They would provide resources to families who couldn't otherwise afford animal therapy. Maria would be the director. She'd already decided to quit her job as an administrative assistant to dedicate herself full-time to this cause. The other mothers would form the initial board. They would launch a website, start a fundraising campaign, and begin changing lives. Local businesses heard about the movement and immediately wanted to help. Riverside Pet Supply donated $5,000. A local veterinary clinic offered free health care for any therapy dogs in the program. A dog training facility offered free space for training sessions. Denver Community Bank established a special fund where people could donate specifically to Pause in Progress. By the end of the first week, they'd raised $28,000. By the end of the second week, $75,000. A local news anchor did a feature on the forming nonprofit, and donations poured in from across the country. $5 here, $20 there, $500 from someone whose grandchild had autism, $10,000 from a wealthy philanthropist who'd seen Sophia's video and been moved to tears. Sophia's vocabulary continued expanding exponentially. By week 3, she was speaking in complete sentences. "Mama, I want to see Rex today. Daddy, can we go to the park? I love my puppy friend." Simple sentences that other parents took for granted, but that made Maria and Carlos cry every single time. Doctor brought Sophia's case to a national autism conference, presenting it as a breakthrough example of animal-assisted therapy's potential. Researchers from 3 major universities contacted the family asking to study Sophia's progress. Autism Speaks, the nation's largest autism advocacy organization, reached out wanting to partner with Pause in Progress. Officer found himself speaking at community centers, schools, and police conferences about the power of community policing. He and Rex became ambassadors not just for the Denver Police Department, but for a new approach to law enforcement that prioritized connection over enforcement. Chief authorized the expansion of the K9 unit specifically for therapy work. 3 new therapy-certified dogs were added to the department. The weekly park sessions expanded to twice weekly, then 3 times weekly. Other parks across Denver wanted to host sessions. And then came the calls from other states. Phoenix Police Department wanted to start a program. Chicago PD called. LAPD sent representatives to observe. Houston, Miami, Seattle, Boston, police departments across America were watching Denver and wanting to replicate the model. 4 months after Sophia spoke her first words, Pause in Progress officially launched with $247,000 in funding, a dedicated facility, 6 trained therapy dogs, and partnerships with 15 police departments across Colorado. Maria stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Sophia by her side, Rex sitting patiently beside them both. "4 months ago, my daughter couldn't speak," Maria said into the microphone, her voice steady but emotional. "Today, she won't stop talking." The crowd laughed through their tears. "And today, we're opening doors for thousands of other families. This is just the beginning." Sophia tugged on her mother's sleeve. Maria bent down and Sophia whispered something in her ear. Maria smiled and lifted Sophia to the microphone. The little girl's voice rang out clear and strong. "Thank you, you're my hero." The crowd erupted in applause. And in that moment, Everyone present knew they were witnessing not just one miracle, but the birth of a movement that would change countless lives for generations to come. 6 months after Sophia spoke her first words, officers stood in a conference room at the Regency in Washington, D.C., facing an audience of 300 police chiefs from across America. His hands were sweating. He'd faced armed suspects without this level of nervousness, but public speaking to this many people was different. Rex sat beside him on the stage, calm and dignified in his official K-9 vest, completely unbothered by the sea of faces staring at them. "I'm not a scholar," began, his voice slightly shaky. "I'm not a therapist or a researcher. I'm just a cop who stopped at a park with his dog one day. But that one ordinary moment changed everything, for one family, for my department, and now, apparently, for departments across this country." He clicked the remote, and Sophia's face filled the screen behind him. That moment captured on video when she'd said, "Hi, puppy," for the first time. Even after seeing it hundreds of times, his throat tightened. The audience leaned forward, captivated. This is Sophia. 6 months ago, she'd never spoken a word in her life. Today, she doesn't stop talking. The audience laughed softly. But this story isn't really about one little girl, as miraculous as her breakthrough was. It's about what happens when we remember that the badge we wear isn't just about enforcement, it's about connection. Community policing isn't a program or a policy. It's a philosophy. It's showing up. It's being present. It's letting a K-9 partner be exactly who he is: gentle, patient, accepting, and watching miracles unfold. The presentation showed statistics. 23 police departments in 15 states had launched K-9 therapy programs in the past 6 months. Over 400 nonverbal children had participated. 47 of them had spoken their first words. Dozens more showed significant improvements in communication and social engagement. Community trust in police had measurably increased in neighborhoods where the programs operated. Police Chief Victoria Martinez from Phoenix stood during the Q&A. "Officer, we implemented your model in Phoenix 3 months ago. Yesterday, a 5-year-old boy who'd never spoken told my K-9 officer, 'I love you.' The officer called me crying. How do we scale this? How do we make sure every community has access to this?" Felt the weight of that question. We partner with organizations like Pause and Progress. We train our K-9 units not just for tactical work but for community therapy. We allocate resources. And most importantly, we change how we measure success. We start counting not just arrests and response times but also connections made, families helped, and hope restored. The room erupted in applause. After the presentation, was surrounded by officers wanting to know more, wanting to bring the program to their cities. A captain from Seattle, a lieutenant from Atlanta, a sergeant from rural Montana who worked in a community with high rates of autism and limited access to therapy services. Meanwhile, 3,000 miles away at medical school, Doctor was presenting her research findings to a packed auditorium. Her team had been studying Sophia and 42 other children who'd experienced breakthroughs through K-9 therapy programs. The data was stunning. "What we're seeing," Doctor explained, pointing to brain scan images on the screen, "is that K-9 interaction activates specific neural pathways related to emotional processing and language production. The dog's presence reduces cortisol, the stress hormone, while increasing oxytocin and dopamine. For children with autism, who often experience heightened anxiety in social situations, this creates a neurological environment where language pathways can activate more easily." A researcher from Yale raised her hand. "But why police dogs specifically? What makes them different from therapy dogs or family pets?" Doctor smiled. "We think it's multifactorial. Police K-9s are exceptionally well trained. They have incredible impulse control and emotional stability. They're working dogs with a job which gives them a calm confidence. And there's something about the formality of the setting, the uniform, the official nature of the interaction, that adds structure and safety. Children with autism often thrive on structure and predictability." The research was being fast-tracked for publication in the Journal of Autism and Developmental Disorders. Doctor had already received grant funding from the National Institutes of Health to expand the study to 500 children across 20 states. In a studio in Los Angeles, documentary filmmaker James was editing footage for a feature-length documentary titled Finding Voice, Sophia's Story. He'd spent 4 months following the family, officer, and pause in progress. He'd captured Sophia's journey from nonverbal to speaking in full paragraphs. He'd filmed other children having their own breakthroughs. He'd interviewed neuroscientists, autism advocates, police chiefs, and families whose lives had been transformed. The most powerful footage was from last week, Sophia's first day of preschool. James had watched through his viewfinder as Sophia, wearing a purple backpack almost as big as she was, walked into Riverside Preschool holding her mother's hand. A specially trained therapy dog named Bella would visit the school twice weekly, specifically to support Sophia's continued progress. "Mama, I'm ready," Sophia had said, her voice clear and confident. "I want to make friends." Maria had cried. She still cried often, but now they were happy tears. She'd knelt down and cupped Sophia's face. "You're so brave, I'm so proud of you." "Made me brave," Sophia had said matter-of-factly. "He showed me words aren't scary." James had to stop filming because his own hands were shaking too much. That line, "he showed me words aren't scary," would be the emotional climax of the documentary. It captured everything: the fear, the breakthrough, the transformation. The film was scheduled to premiere at the film festival in January, with distribution deals already being negotiated with Netflix and Amazon Prime. In Colorado's state capitol building, Maria and Carlos sat before the House Committee on Health and Human Services. Sophia sat between them, coloring quietly, occasionally looking up to say, "Mama, look at my picture," or "I'm drawing." Each time she spoke, several committee members visibly fought back tears. Representative David, the committee chair, leaned forward. "Mrs., in your testimony, you mentioned that animal-assisted therapy isn't typically covered by insurance. Can you elaborate on the financial burden families face?" Maria nodded, her prepared notes in front of her, though she barely needed them. She'd lived this reality. "Traditional speech therapy cost us $150 per session, 3 times a week. Our insurance covered some of it, but not all. We spent over $15,000 out of pocket in 2 years. And that didn't work. One 15-minute interaction with Rex accomplished what 2 years of therapy couldn't. But families shouldn't have to choose between rent and therapy. They shouldn't have to wait for a miracle in a park." She paused, composing herself. Carlos took her hand. "We're asking you to pass House Bill 247, which would mandate insurance coverage for animal-assisted therapy for children with autism and other developmental disorders. We're asking you to fund grants for programs like Pause and Progress so every community can have access. And we're asking you to recognize that therapy comes in many forms. Sometimes it has 4 legs and a wagging tail." The committee passed the bill unanimously. Colorado would become the first state to mandate insurance coverage for certified animal-assisted therapy. Other states were already drafting similar legislation. That evening, a package arrived at the home. Inside was an advance copy of a children's book titled Sophia and Rex, A True Story of Finding Your Voice. Written by best-selling children's author Laura Martinez and illustrated with beautiful watercolors, it told Sophia's story in simple, hopeful language. The dedication page read, "For every child still searching for their voice, and for every person who helps them find it." All proceeds from the book would go to Pause and Progress and autism research. Pre-orders had already exceeded 50,000 copies. Schools across America were adding it to their libraries. It was being translated into 12 languages. Sophia held the book, running her fingers over the illustration of herself hugging Rex. "Mama, that's me," she exclaimed. "I'm in a book." Maria pulled her daughter into her lap. "You are, baby. You're going to help so many other kids feel less alone." Because Rex helped me, Sophia asked. Because Rex helped you, Maria confirmed, tears streaming down her face for the thousandth time. And because you were so brave. Sophia thought about this seriously, her little face scrunched in concentration. Then she said, with the profound wisdom that children sometimes possess, I think lots of kids are brave. They just need someone to believe in them, like believed in me. Carlos, overhearing from the kitchen, had to sit down. His daughter, his miraculous, speaking, wise daughter, had just articulated something it had taken him 40 years to understand. Outside, the autumn sun was setting over Denver, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Across the city, across the state, across the nation, children were meeting therapy dogs. Some would speak their first words today. Others would tomorrow or next week or next month. Some might never speak, but they would connect in other ways, finding their own paths to communication. And it had all started with one little girl, one police dog, and one impossible moment on an ordinary Saturday morning that proved miracles weren't just possible. They were happening every single day, one connection at a time. Officer adjusted his dress uniform one more time, checking his reflection in the patrol car window. Today was special. Today marked exactly 1 year since Sophia spoke her first words. The family had invited him and Rex to Sophia's 4th birthday party, and was more nervous than he'd been testifying before Congress. "You ready, boy?" asked Rex, who sat patiently in the passenger seat wearing a special that read Sophia's hero in glittery letters. The German shepherd's tail wagged and could swear the dog was smiling. Over the past year, Rex had become something of a celebrity, featured on magazine covers, invited to the White House, awarded a Presidential Medal of Freedom for service animals. But new Rex didn't care about any of that. What the dog loved was the work, the connections. The moment when a child's face lit up with joy. The backyard was transformed into a wonderland of pink and purple balloons, a bouncy castle shaped like a dog house, and a banner that read, "Happy 4th Birthday, Sophia." But what struck most was the sound. Children's laughter, high-pitched voices calling out to each other, the beautiful chaos of a normal child's birthday party. And right in the middle of it all was Sophia. She wore a princess dress covered in pictures of dogs and a small tiara that kept slipping sideways. Her dark curls bounced as she actually ran, full speed toward and Rex the moment she spotted them. "Marcus, Rex, you came," she screamed at full volume, her voice strong and clear and utterly miraculous. Look at my birthday, I'm 4. She held up 4 fingers, just in case there was any confusion, her face radiating pure joy. Rex's tail went into overdrive as Sophia crashed into him with a hug that nearly knocked her backwards. The dog gently licked her face, making her dissolve into giggles, that bell sound had heard in his dreams for a year now. "He came, Mama, Daddy, Rex came to my party," Sophia shouted, as if her parents couldn't see the massive German shepherd standing in their backyard. Maria emerged from the house carrying a birthday cake, and when she saw, she set it down and walked straight over to hug him. No words needed, just tears, happy tears, grateful tears, the kind that said, "Thank you for giving me my daughter back," without speaking. Carlos appeared with a beer for and a dog treat for Rex. "1 year," he said, shaking his head in wonder. "I still can't believe it sometimes. I wake up in the morning and hear her singing in her room, and I think I'm dreaming." Watched Sophia return to playing with her friends. Yes, friends. Real friendships with other children from her preschool. She was laughing with a little boy named Tyler, arguing good-naturedly about whose turn it was on the bouncy castle. A normal 4-year-old disagreement spoken in complete sentences with emotional inflection and everything. "She starts regular kindergarten in the fall," Maria said, appearing at side. "No aid, no special accommodations beyond having Bella visit once a week. Her teachers say she's right on track developmentally. Some of her speech patterns are still a little delayed, but doctor says she'll catch up completely within another year." Maria's voice broke. "A year ago, we didn't know if she'd ever speak. Now she won't stop talking." She told me yesterday that she wants to be a veterinarian when she grows up, so she can help dogs like Rex. Felt his own eyes getting wet. Again, he'd become a complete softie this year. How's Paws and Progress doing? Maria's face transformed with pride. We've helped 387 children across Colorado so far. We have partnerships with 42 police departments in 18 states. We just received a $2 million grant from the Department of Health and Human Services to expand nationwide. We're opening 3 new therapy centers next month. She paused, watching Sophia. And 63 nonverbal children have spoken their first words through our program. 63. That's 63 families who got their miracle. A woman didn't recognize approached shyly, holding the hand of a small boy. "Excuse me, officer, I'm Rachel. This is my son David. We met at Riverside Park a year ago. David spoke his first word that day. Remember?" His face lit up with recognition. "Of course." David said dog to Ranger. "How is he?" Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "Tell officer what you learned today, David." The 5-year-old boy looked up made direct eye contact, something Rachel had said he never did before, and said clearly, "I learned my ABCs, a B, C, D, E, F, G." He sang the entire alphabet song, his mother crying through every letter. "He's in regular kindergarten now," Rachel said when David finished. "He has friends. He talks to us about his day. He tells us he loves us." She grabs hand. Thank you for being in that park that day. Thank you for Rex. Thank you for changing our lives." Looked around the backyard and realized it was filled with families from the K-9 Connection program. Parents whose children had found their voices. Siblings who'd gotten their brothers and sisters back. Grandparents who'd heard their speak for the first time. This wasn't just Sophia's birthday party. It was a celebration of an entire community transformed. Chief arrived with his wife, bringing a special gift, an official Denver Police Department K-9 unit badge made just for Sophia. "Honorary K-9 Handler," it read, "for extraordinary service to the community." Sophia held it like it was made of gold, her eyes huge. "This means I can help Rex?" she asked seriously. "It means you already have helped him," Chief said, kneeling down to her level. "You helped us remember why we do this job. You reminded us that the best part of being police officers is helping people, especially brave little girls like you." Sophia considered this, then threw her arms around the chief's neck. "Thank you. I love police dogs. When I grow up, I'm going to have 100 police dogs." The party continued into the evening. As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the yard, Sophia made a request. She wanted everyone to gather around for her birthday wish. 30 people formed a circle as Maria brought out the cake, decorated with a picture of Sophia hugging Rex, created from edible frosting. 4 candles flickered in the twilight. Sophia stood on her chair, her small voice somehow carrying to everyone present. "I'm supposed to make a secret wish," she announced, "but I want to say it out loud instead. Is that okay?" Maria and Carlos nodded, too emotional to speak. Sophia looked around at all the faces, her parents, Rex, the friends and families whose lives had intertwined with hers. Then she said, "I wish that every kid who can't talk yet gets to meet a dog like Rex. I wish they all get to find their words like I did, because words are magic and everyone should get to have magic." There wasn't a dry eye in the backyard. Sophia took a deep breath and blew out all 4 candles in one try. The crowd erupted in applause and tears and laughter all mixed together. Later, as the party wound down and guests began leaving, Sophia sat on the grass with Rex, her head resting against his side. She was exhausted from the excitement but happy. Sat down beside them, and Sophia immediately climbed into his lap. She asked, her voice sleepy, "Yes, sweetheart. Did you know you and Rex were going to change my life that day in the park?" Felt his chest tighten. "No, honey, I had no idea." Sophia thought about this, yawning. "That's funny, because you changed everything. You and Rex made me me." She patted the dog's head. "Thank you for stopping at the park that day." "Thank you for being brave enough to walk up to a big scary dog," replied, his voice thick. Sophia giggled. "Rex isn't scary, he's my best friend." She paused, then added with the profound simplicity of a child, "I think sometimes the best things happen when you're not expecting them, like magic but real." As darkness fell over Denver, sat with Sophia in his lap and Rex beside them, thinking about a year ago. About an ordinary Saturday that became extraordinary. About how one moment of connection had rippled outward, changing hundreds of lives, influencing policy, inspiring research, and proving that miracles weren't just stories, they were real. Sophia's voice, once silent, now filled the evening air with a bedtime song she'd learned at preschool. Maria and Carlos stood on the porch, holding each other and watching their daughter, their speaking, singing, thriving daughter, and knew that every impossible thing they dreamed of had come true. And Rex, the hero of this story, simply wagged his tail and rested his head on his paws, content in the knowledge that he'd done what he did best. He'd shown up, been himself, and helped a little girl find the courage to use her voice. 1 year. One transformation, one miracle that kept multiplying, proving that the smallest moments of connection could create the biggest changes, and that love, whether it came on 2 legs or 4, had the power to unlock voices, heal hearts, and change the world. The end.